Today we're going to be comparing what it's like living in two of BC's biggest hotspots, the city of Vancouver and the city of Kelowna. So recently we've done a few videos that are quite similar to this, but we still get a lot of questions asking about Vancouver and about Kelowna. So hopefully we can clear all of those up in this video.
Yeah, like some of these points may be redundant if you've been watching all of our videos in a row, although we are going to be bringing up some old points and some new points about living in Vancouver and living in Kelowna and what they're like in comparison to each other. So if you're still undecided about what city to move to, you know you want to move to BC or you want to visit BC, or you're just wondering about Vancouver and Kelowna, then this video may be helpful for you. For those of you who don't know us, hi, we are mostly from Vancouver. We've kind of lived in a whole bunch of places, but we met in Vancouver. And for the past couple of years, we've been in and out of calling Okanagan our home base. So Nick's been working in West Kelowna and Kelowna. And recently we took a house sitting opportunity in Kelowna as well. So although Vancouver is still home in our hearts, I think it's fair to say that we spend more time in the Okanagan in the past few years.
Yeah.
So the very first thing that we want to talk about is the price of living in the two cities. So Vancouver is more expensive than living in Kelowna. Living in Vancouver is pretty much more expensive than living basically anywhere. To be completely honest. But needless to say, Kelowna's not off the hook either. Kelowna is the 6th most expensive city in Canada, so the prices are creeping up. Kelowna is getting more expensive for sure.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. But needless to say, to clear it up, we got some comments in our last video about living in the Okanagan. Yes, we have to say Vancouver is more expensive than living in Kelowna. One of the reasons why I would argue that or say that they're pretty similar is because in the Kelowna area, we personally find it more useful to have a car. Whereas when we lived in Vancouver, we utilized transit a lot of the time and didn't have to use a car. So paying car payments on top of rent would be more expensive for people like us who don't find a car necessary in Vancouver, but do find a car necessary living in Kelowna.
Vancouver is a much bigger city than Kelowna, but that being said, Kelowna still feels like a city. So if you compare the two based on population size alone, Vancouver has a population of 675,000 people within the city, and Kelowna has just 132,000, which makes them sound not that comparable. But Kelowna is one of the biggest cities in all of BC and definitely the biggest in the Okanagan.
Vancouver is just much bigger. It's just a fact. Vancouver is a bigger city, and Kelowna to some people would just seem like a small town. But in BC, we don't have very many big cities like Vancouver. Vancouver is our biggest city, and there aren't even 1 million people living within the city limits. So yeah, when you're looking at the population size alone, it feels like they're not even comparable at all. But they are, because there's not many cities in BC in general. And a lot of people do choose between Vancouver and Kelowna because there are universities in both, there's an airport in both. We'll get into that later, but yeah, you're right.
Kelowna has both a big city sort of vibe to it, as well as, small kind of country rural area just on the outskirts. Vancouver, you have to travel pretty far outside of the city limits to get that kind of rural sort of feeling. Kelowna just has it kind of all encompassed within the Kelowna area.
It doesn't feel like a small town, even though the population size is very small. It doesn't feel too much like a small, like, backcountry town. It does feel like a city, and it is nice to live in. So if you are looking for that, like, city feel, but not with, nearly 1 million people in it, Kelowna might be a really good size city for you.
It's like a nice mid-sized city, I would say.
Yeah.
You have the option of being within the downtown sort of area. If you travel just to the outskirts, you have tons of hikes and mountains surrounding it. There's a ton of lakes all around here, so it's a nice like mid-sized city. I'm sure a lot of people who come from bigger cities would say Vancouver is like a mid-sized city.
Yeah, like after having lived in Toronto and then moved to Vancouver, Vancouver also feels small.
Yeah.
But if you're moving from Vancouver to Kelowna, Kelowna will feel small.
Yeah.
Although people in the Okanagan, like people who live, we're in and out of Lumbee, and Kelowna feels massive. So it all, it's all relative. But I think that you're right in terms of it just being a nice mid-sized city. You kind of get like the perks of living in a city. There's a great downtown. There's cool bars, restaurants. There are lots of things to do. You're not really missing out on a lot, but at the same time, it's not super congested when you're walking around. And yeah, it's just a nice sized city. I think that you put it right.
Yeah. Definitely Kelowna. It still has everything that you need. And you can walk like 20, 30 minutes, and all of a sudden you're at a hike somewhere, or at the lakefront where there's not that many people. So it really has a lot of good variety in Kelowna.
Whereas Vancouver is more of a traditional city, although a small city, but a traditional city too. Since Vancouver is a bigger city and more of a world destination, I would say, than Kelowna, it has a better transit system. So we kind of touched on this earlier, but you can fully get by in Vancouver without owning a car, and the transit system is pretty good. Some Vancouverites would argue that the transit system is terrible, but from our experience living, again, in multiple cities around the world, everybody says that about every city ever. So I've yet to hear a local be like, yeah, the transit system in my city is the best. I haven't heard that. Everyone likes to complain about transit, so people definitely do that in Vancouver. But in comparison to Kelowna, it's leagues better. In addition, at rush hour, again, in any city anywhere, it's going to be bad. But Kelowna's rush hour traffic is absolutely unbearable. It is by far
Horrendous.
like the worst rush hour traffic we've ever seen.
Yeah. The way that the city layout is that there are no overpasses, or the highway doesn't go over any of the side roads. So essentially, you're just hitting light after light after light the whole entire drive along the highway. So right when you come over the bridge to get into Kelowna, if you're coming that way, and pretty much the whole way through Kelowna, you could end up sitting there for like a couple hours. Especially in the summertime, there are a lot of tourists that come to Kelowna because it is so beautiful. It gets really warm here. Obviously, we'll touch on that later. It just gets really, really busy, and working with a lot of locals, I've heard some awful stories about cars that lack AC, and 40-degree heat in the middle of August, and you're backed up for hours. So that can be a huge negative for some people.
So Nick kind of touched on this earlier about the tourism industry and the tourists that come to both cities. In both cities, there are a lot of tourists, and this could be considered a good thing or a bad thing. Some people just hate when there are tons of tourists around because, of course, there's going to be like lots of traffic and lots of people stopping and marveling at things. I personally, I mean, I may be biased because we are tourists in a lot of places. I think the tourism industry is absolutely fantastic. It does a lot for the economy, especially here in the Okanagan. The Okanagan is flooded with vineyards and orchards and things to see. Big White Ski Resort is here as well. So there are a lot of tourists in both cities. Again, you would probably expect it for Vancouver, but you should also expect it for Kelowna as well. The tourism industry also brings a lot of jobs to Kelowna. So if you're coming here for like a working holiday visa, or you're abroad, or if you're just looking to find work right off the bat, there are a lot of jobs in like winemaking, agriculture, farming, that kind of stuff. So a lot of people are looking for farm help up here. And I know that a lot of tourists do that when they come here to the Okanagan. So that is really great as well.
So good news if you are moving to Kelowna or Vancouver for some water, because Kelowna has a ton of lakes all around it, and Vancouver, obviously, you're on the edge of the Pacific Ocean. Year round, there are a lot of fun recreational things that you can do, both in the ocean and in the lakes here in Kelowna, but it's really kind of a personal preference on whether you like to spend time in the ocean, whether you like to spend time in lakes. And lake culture is just going to be more boating and water skiing. A lot of people have sea-doos, things like that. In Vancouver, the ocean culture is typically a lot of people swimming, sunbathing. So it just kind of depends on what kind of vibe you're looking for. If you like the nice salty ocean, or if you like the warmer freshwater lakes, it's really a personal preference.
But both cities pride themselves in being very outdoorsy cities. Both have a lot of hikes within them and on the outskirts. Within an hour drive of Kelowna or Vancouver, you're going to find even more mountains and hikes and stuff like that.
Do you like the nice salty sea air and running by the ocean, or do you like being on a boat in the water and wakeboarding?
It's really
preference.
personal preference.
Yeah.
I personally like both, so there's that too, and a lot of people I think do. But if you're a little more picky, then you can make that decision for yourself, based on, you kind of have the ocean vibe in Vancouver and lake vibe here in Kelowna. Because I just mentioned jogging on the seawall in the summer, so you can do that in Vancouver because there are more mild summers. In Kelowna, you probably don't want to go for a jog in the afternoon in the summertime in July or August. So Kelowna actually gets really, really hot in the summer and Vancouver does not. Vancouver is more mild all year round, and that includes the winters as well. So many people know that Vancouver has more mild winters, some of the wildest, the wild, wild winter. Um,
The wild, wild winters of Vancouver, BC. Yes.
Milder winters in Canada, but very wet and very gray. And sometimes that gloomy weather can give people a very gloomy mood and can really affect people in the wintertime in Vancouver. Whereas Kelowna gets a little bit colder, actually way colder, snowier, more of a winter wonderland in the winter, especially in the surrounding areas. But you do get more sunshine here. If you're coming from a different country and you really want to experience all of Canada's 4 seasons in their glory, then Kelowna or the Okanagan would be a great choice for you. Whereas if you are trying to escape winter or you just don't want to deal with it at all, then Vancouver might be a better choice. So yeah, Vancouver has that gray mild and Kelowna has a sunnier, snowy winter.
It's good to note that just Canada's west coast is the warmest place that you'll find in all of Canada throughout the wintertime. So if Canada is your number one priority that you want to go to, but you want to experience the most mild winter, definitely the coast is where you want to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really wish that we had, spent more time in Victoria, like actually live in Victoria, which I'm sure that we will in the future. Really feel like I would have a lot to add about Victoria in a video like this. I would think that a lot of people moving to BC would be considering either Kelowna, Vancouver, or Victoria. Victoria is also awesome. Kind of has more of those Kelowna perks, like a little smaller, but it also has the Vancouver perks, like being more mild. Victoria has more sun than Vancouver, so there's all that. But I don't really feel like we can speak on it quite yet. Maybe we'll get someone in one of our videos who lives in Victoria to talk to us about it.
Mm-hmm.
If you are interested in that, if that sounds interesting to you, please let us know because we could probably arrange that.
Something else you may not realize is that both cities actually have an airport. So obviously Vancouver does, but a lot of people don't realize that Kelowna does as well. It is technically an international airport, as they do have flights that go down to the United States. But typically, if you're looking to fly internationally outside of North America, you're going to have to go to Vancouver. But Kelowna has a ton of flights that go to Vancouver every single day. You're not landlocked here, stuck in Kelowna. You're able to fly out of here whenever you need to.
Yeah, I learned when actually making this video that Kelowna has 9 international airlines that fly in and out of the Kelowna International Airport. And also the Kelowna International Airport does really great things for the Kelowna economy and offers a lot of jobs for people as well. Yeah, it is something to kind of think about if you're considering moving to Kelowna, but you're like, shit, I'm gonna have to fly into Vancouver and then drive for 5 hours to go, like, it's not like that. Kelowna has an airport and there are flights in and out of it all day, every day. 70 flights a day, I think it said.
Wow.
Yeah.
There is a ton of beauty in both of these cities. Kelowna is a growing city. It has tons of orchards, which also means fresh fruit, small businesses, wineries, a little bit smaller than Vancouver, but a really great little city to call home.
And many people know that Vancouver is one of the most beautiful cities in the whole world. People come from all over the world to, again, marvel at its beauty. But I don't think that the Okanagan has any less beauty than Vancouver. They're just so beautiful in their own unique and different ways. And for those who, want to move to BC, but they don't really think that Vancouver is nice for them, I really do recommend exploring what the Okanagan has to offer. For example, Osoyoos is Canada's only desert, and the Okanagan has much drier, hotter summers. Like, it's really fun here, and it's really fun in Vancouver as well. Both cities are just really, really beautiful. Some of Canada's best in terms of beauty.
And they're only like 3.5 to 4 hours apart. So even if you are in one, you're not too far away from being able to go check out the other. And if you don't have a vehicle, as we mentioned, they both have airports, so you can fly between the two, and I think it's, what, an hour flight, maybe?
Yeah, like it's not like you pick one and then it's like you have to be
Yeah, that's
stuck
the
there.
one, you know?
Yeah, they're really not too far away from each other. So, if you want to live in Vancouver but still experience the Okanagan, you can do that as well. Given that there's not a global pandemic and that travel restrictions aren't in place, but hopefully, if you're planning a trip, you're not planning it for right now anyway. You get asked this question a lot, and I'm going to answer it. I haven't told you what it is yet, but we'll see if you answer it the same way. People do ask, I'm moving to BC, and what would you recommend? Like, what would you say? Would you move to Vancouver or would you move to Kelowna? Can I answer first?
Okay, I don't have my answer.
Okay.
But yeah.
I think that if you're immigrating here permanently, I would really consider Kelowna. Because you can still go to the city, and Kelowna just is a growing city. I personally think that it's a good place to invest right now if you're considering doing that. And there's just more space. There's a chance to live a little more affordably. But I think that if you're coming here for like a working holiday visa, you're only coming here for a year or something, and you're trying to choose a city to go to in Canada, I'd recommend Vancouver because you are closer to more of like the more touristy destinations like Whistler and Victoria. And like we said earlier, you can always come to the Okanagan. But I personally have like FOMO. So when we moved to Australia, like I really wanted to live in Sydney. If when we were living in Newcastle, I was kind of like, okay, like Newcastle's amazing, but I want to be like a part of the action. But that's just my personal preference.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say? Like you personally?
I mean, it would differ based on who's asking and what I know about that person. But I mean, the point that you touched on, just as a general sort of statement, like, I think you hit all the points right. Like, that's about as well thought out as I probably could have made it. Yeah, Kelowna is probably I think the first place I'd recommend. But I mean, I don't know. Like, again, like I said, it really depends on who's asking, what I know about you. I think Tom Segura actually has a stand-up bit about this where he talks about, you know, you travel a lot. Where should I go? And he says, obviously in a lot funnier way. I'm completely butchering the joke, but basically that I don't know you, so I can't give you that advice. Which I wholeheartedly agree with. Everything that Rachel said, I agree with that. But I don't know you, so I can't make that judgment. Vancouver may be the place for you. Kelowna may be the place for you. But if you're just coming here and you want to settle and make a new life, then maybe Kelowna, because Vancouver's not that far away. But if you're here on a working holiday visa, like Rachel said, or you're just here for a short amount of time, you don't want to miss out on, on the big city action, I guess. Then maybe Vancouver's the place for you.
Anyways, that's all we have for you for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any more specific questions on Vancouver versus Kelowna, please let us know. We do try to cover everything that we possibly can in the videos. We try to think them out as much as we can. Sometimes we miss stuff, so we're happy to answer those questions. But yeah, if you have any specific things that you want to know, please ask us and we will do our best to answer them for you. Anyways, we will see you in the next video.
Bye.
Bye.